need to find this X there. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna talk about prototype tools, and you're also gonna hear things like unicorns and superpowers as well, just to make it more interesting. So the first slide, what you see is a basic product development cycle, and without further explaining what a prototype is, I would like to ask from the audience who haven't seen this presentation yet, where do you think we use prototypes in this cycle? Which step?
Holding the bell.
There? Oh, everywhere? I heard that. So, yeah, it's basically everywhere. So this is why we say prototype is a core tool in product development. And here's my favorite definition of the prototype. It basically demonstrates or proves a design. And it also has superpowers. There you go. So we're going to look at in this cycle where we use what type of prototype and what are their superpowers. So let's start with the first one, the ideate phase. So the example I brought you is what we created through a credit cards design sprint. Most of you is already familiar with design sprint, I guess. So what we created there in this stage is called paper prototypes, which we also reference as static wires and sketches. So these things are created during this sprint. On the top right, what you can see is basically just wiring, just sketching down the layout and putting the functionality next to it, just writing it down. The other one, which you might heard of, is Crazy Eights. So this is basically this 7 sketches in one paper created in just a matter of minutes. And it's also a great tool to just like share bulk of ideas during the sprint. And the third one is basically a storyboard, which basically explains a journey using these wires we just sketched. So here are our first superpower. Is it's just obvious. Like we just like static wires, you can explain an idea really fast. The next one is wireframing. So when you have all these sketches and these ideas, you would like to put it together just to present how the user journey is gonna look like. And the example I brought you is a life insurance buy now, which accidentally started today. So
that was no accident.
Yeah. So this type of prototype I'm going to show you is called a so-called conceptual prototype. And we created this prototype to present the new life insurance buy now journey. And what you see there basically is just a static screen that shows the first step of the question set. You can't really click on the buttons. You can't enter anything into the fields. You can just link these steps together and get to the next step of the journey. And we basically created this to share this journey in the early stage with our stakeholders in the business. And the tool we used for it is called InVision, which is a tool we use very often in this stage. Marvel is a similar tool as well, but I'm mentioning this for product owners, for example. PowerPoint is a great tool. It's just to put together static screens and to just present a journey. So 2 new superpowers at this stage: presenting a user journey and get early feedback at this stage. Or if you just think about that, with a conceptual prototype, you can even create surveys on this type of prototype to just present the steps and ask feedback on how our users like a specific question, for example. Okay, so the next one is the design stage. So whenever we have wireframes completed, then we put all these together to a journey. We would like to put the proper designs on it and present interactions as well. And this example is the Money Made Easy navigation, which is called a visual prototype. So you can see that in this example, the colors are there, the styles are exactly how it's going to look in the end product, and look at the opening interaction which created there. It's basically how it's going to work. So we use this type of prototype to visualize how a feature is going to work. Not necessarily test this with users, but it's great to present that, okay, this is how it's going to look and this is how it's going to feel. This prototype has been created with a tool called Flinto, but we also use another tool which basically does the same thing called Principle. It's a great tool to create visual prototypes. So we visualize the feature here. And we get to the next stage, building. So I'm going to show you the same thing with life insurance buy now prototype, but with a higher fidelity of prototype called UX prototype. And on the right, you can see that now I can click on the fields. I can enter my date of birth. So I basically can fill all the form, bring it to the results page where I can make up results. And because this type of prototype simulates the functions, we can bring this out and test with users. This prototype has been created with a tool called Azure, which is basically the most powerful tool of creating UX prototype. Just the quickest. So this is what we have here. We can validate this type of prototype with users now. And the next one is the ultimate level of prototyping. It's called a functional prototype. This example is going to show an energy design prototype. And what you're going to see, it's going to load the results and then show a result page. So at this point, the prototype loads the results, and you can see that your tariff appears on the middle. So it compares your tariff with the other ones. And when you arrive to the results page, you see real prices. And sometimes it's really important to use this fidelity, because our user testers know much better that users are just really after the price, so they want to see real prices there. So if this is what you really need to get a connection with third-party systems to access all this information in, this is the type of prototype you need, and it's basically created by HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But I don't want to steal Adam's credit from the next presentation. What the benefit of this prototype is also is that these guys create things that they could reuse later. So when they create, for example, a form or a radio button, they can reuse it in other prototypes later, so they don't need to code it again. So this is what we have here as a superpower, using real data by connecting to third-party systems and generate reusable code. And in the end, to the test and learn phase, we bring this out to test with users. And the question is really which type we should use. But what we're really after is this moment. Great Scott, it works, or it doesn't work. So really, we just need to learn the fastest way. So we can use lower fidelity of prototypes. We can test like a conceptual prototype by a survey to learn the fastest in the early stages. Then we can create a UX prototype out of it and test with the users. So just summarize what we just seen in a simple to smart axis. We had static wires explaining an idea, conceptual prototypes which presented user journey and we collected early feedback with it, but it also would be a great tool to explain an idea. It's just faster to use static wires for that. Visual prototypes is kind of like a different to conceptual ones, but when it's a UX prototype, it all comes together. And in the end, on top of it, the functional prototype gives us all these features. So the question is, why don't we just build functional prototypes? Because that basically includes everything. So let's plot it with just like showing the time as well. So yeah, static wires is just like, as I said, minutes, matter of minutes. Creating conceptual prototypes, maybe out of static wires, linking them together, it just could be done in a day. So the same as with visual prototypes. When you create a UX prototype out of it, it could be done in a week. But when you really require the most functionality and you have time to build it, you should really consider a functional one. So the reason why I just plotted there these things is that you can see a golden medium where it goes. So obviously there is a no-go zone there. You don't want to build a very simple prototype using a functional one, but there is also a unicorn zone, which does not really exist. So don't try to build a functional one in a day or two, because it's not going to happen. You should really rather just consider a UX one, or just a conceptual one, as I said. So, the key takeaways from this presentation is going to be: choose the right prototype tool, knowing what superpowers you need out of it. Learn the fastest. And don't chase the unicorn, because it doesn't exist. Thank you.